we're trying to, when we're trying to talk and ask or answer questions. Thanks for recording, Vanessa. Um, if
Thanks,
you could
Stacy.
make sure that your devices are silenced, sometimes that means your microphone. Um, we're not really in an open space where everybody can hear each other's devices, so not super important for this class, but at any rate, let's go ahead and go. Vanessa, can you go to slide 4, please?
Yeah, I hit the roller ball on my dumbass. It's a Monday for me today. Not really, but
Okay. All right. Class participation, we want you to talk. We want to hear what you have to say. There's enough of us that we can have an open kind of forum. We can't all see each other, so if you want to just popcorn out when you have a question, that's totally fine. Here we go. So today, Module 4 is what you went over within the Canvas course. And we're going to talk today about a few things related to those topics within Module 4. So first and foremost, leading your special education team. We do that through supervision, through evaluation, and through active support of those team members. So we'll talk a lot about what that looks like, how you guys do that currently, and ways to improve that if you feel like that could use some improvement. We'll also talk about conflict resolution as it relates to special education, what that process looks like, and the resources that are available to support that process through the Idaho Department of Education. And we'll also talk about family engagement. You want to go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, leading your special education team. So as an administrator, you are the instructional leader in your building. You also are leading your special education team. It's very likely that you have a director of special education and other support staff to kind of lead that team on the daily, but you are there to lead everyone in the building overall. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that make that tricky. Dun, 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 staffing and program shortages. How many of you feel like this is a pretty significant issue that you deal with maybe every day? Anybody? Yes. I feel like that is a pretty universal feeling for any administrator. I can think back to my days as a special education director, and that was the start of my day. 5 o'clock in the morning. Who's calling out? Where are the holes? And that's just like the daily maintenance of what staffing looks like. But overall, these are really hard positions to fill. When we look at what's needed for a special education teacher, what the knowledge base looks like, you have to know what gen ed teachers know, and you also have to know special education. And that is, it can be it feels sometimes like a dual role for those people who hold those roles, right? You have to have a lot of knowledge about behavior. You have to understand specially designed instruction. You have to have a background in what the legal components of special education are when you are completing comprehensive evaluations and developing IEPs. It's a lot of work. And then also you have to work with kids. So it's a large job. And if we look at the data across the nation, about 80% of districts indicate that they have a hard time filling these roles. They are hard to fill, more than any other teaching category, right? When we look at the teachers that are already in those roles, about half of them leave in the first 5 years. That's a huge rate of attrition for people who are highly qualified, for people who have spent time doing the educational components to hold this job and then to get into the field and leave within the first 5 years. That's a really high turnover rate. So let's talk about it. Tell me a little bit about what you see in your own districts. If you find this to be true, or if you maybe have some kind of magic bean that you have planted to create a environment where this is not happening. Does anybody want to share?
I'd agree with that. I think when you talk about someone who's put in the work to do the preparation for to be a special education teacher and then walk away from it, that's one thing. But what I'm seeing more is with alternative authorizations, people who are alternatively authorized,
Yep,
and those are the ones who apply. It seems like it's a lot easier for them to walk away because they haven't put in
sure.
of uh, the years of preparation to become a special ed teacher. They've had, another degree, and then for whatever reason, maybe they're local to the area or something like that. They decide to become a special ed teacher, but since they haven't put in all that work, it's either easier for them, I feel like, to walk away, and that's led to more turnover in some of the districts that I've been in.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate your viewpoint. That is probably a component of it, right? Rebecca says, I think it makes it a more demanding work environment because of the turnover and not having enough staff for the extra help and to minimize caseloads. I agree. There are lots of components to this, right? There are lots of reasons why this is happening. That work environment is incredibly demanding. A lot of times the compensation for the special education teacher or director or whomever is working within that department doesn't feel equitable compared to peers, right? Like I've worked in environments, this is my own personal experience. I've worked in environments where I'm running federal programs, but the athletic director or the PE teacher maybe makes more than I do, but the work is not even close to the same. So that doesn't feel great, right? So I think there are lots of different things that contribute. We also, any person that's working in education, there's a emotional connection to our job, right? And a lot of times for people who are working in special education, we are incredibly connected to our students, and that looks different when we have a classroom full of students who maybe have medical fragility or some other kind of need that the weight of the care for that student is higher than what other students might need. Um, the other component for this is the professional development that they receive. A lot of times for special education teachers, well, okay, before I talk about that, I want to know what you do in your buildings. Talk to me about what professional development looks like for special education teachers relative to special education. Anybody?
So the Post Falls School District has Fridays off, or one Friday a month is professional development. We're on a 4-day work week. And the special ed directors and team have designed like 2 hours of specially designed professional development in kind of like module forms. It's been very effective for
Nice.
our school district.
I love that. Every week, some kind of instruction development related to their specific
It's every
exactly.
month,
Oh,
once
every
a month.
month. Okay, nice.
Once a month.
Excellent. Still good. That's still great.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of times when we do professional development as an entire staff, it is not necessarily related to special education. And so having that carved out, like what you just talked about, Katrina, that's related to special education, that's incredibly powerful. There's also lots of other opportunities. Idaho SESTA offers lots of opportunities throughout the year. Some of that is hard for special education teachers to access, though, because they have to leave the building. It's hard to prep and plan. And a lot of times we get feedback from special ed teachers when they have registered for some of the trainings that we provide that are statewide trainings. And they're like, you know what? I had a substitute. I had everything prepped and planned. I couldn't leave the building because there was too much going on and I just could not leave. It doesn't matter that I've planned for this for myself. My absence in the building would have created a hole that was bigger than one substitute who is not familiar with all of the workings of our district to fill.
So
I
Stephanie,
will say that so I've taught in 6, 7, 8. I can't remember. I've moved around. My husband's Forest Service, and we just move around a lot, and in 3 different states. And the no matter what the budget was, no matter what the resources were, if I had administrators, gen ed administrators who understood, who walked side by side, who prioritized planning time, who saw me as another instructor and allowed me to go to the same trainings that the gen ed teachers went to, that made sure that I had access to the same curriculum that the gen ed teachers had access to, that filled in for me when I had, for whatever reason, something happened and they were there. They were there to support and to fill in. And it felt like we were all in this together. And that made a huge difference in terms of our stress level as special education teachers. That planning time, people sometimes, we talked about this, I think, a couple of sessions ago, the importance of building in planning time for our special education teachers to plan with each other and their parents, but also with gen ed counterparts. It's really vital. And did I cut somebody off? When I
Well,
started?
I was just jumping in, Vanessa. Sorry.
No, I apologize. I couldn't see who I was. Anyway, go ahead.
You're good.
I'm done.
You're good. I was just going to say, from a small school perspective, I see Brandy's written something about our district mentor as well. But part of the reason I took this class is obviously to dive into more of the intricacies of SPED, but also there's some, I mean, I would like some more PD opportunities towards special education. I did go, I think one of the better ones, and maybe it wasn't really centered around what I thought it was the Blue Jeans Conference. That was, I thought that was very informative. But, some of those I think would help me more as an administrator. I mean, I think for our small school, because Brandy and I split half time, we get what we get. And Miss Conant does a great job of keeping us up to date. Ryan is our special ed director for the district, and he does a great job of keeping us. But sometimes you just got to be around people who you can network with and learn kind of some of the ins and outs. And that's kind of why, again, I wanted to come into this. I wanted to hear what some of the other administrators or whoever's taking this class, maybe there's some ideas out there that I could use to get more PD for that opportunity. We do sit in our PLCs. We do it twice a month. We do talk about the things that are going on with the student drafts that go out and talk about each individual's struggles and basically what IEP centers around. We talk about those, some of the challenges we're having. We talk about those things, but I know there's more out there, especially for me. I just don't know where to get it from. And so Ryan does a great job of just sharing with us, but I'm taking this class because I'm like, what can I do? Where can I go? What can I read? And everything you guys have given us from SESTA has been great. And I'm familiar with SESTA, but where are some conferences maybe we can go? And when that lawyer came in from California at the Blue Jean Conference, I was just captivated listening to the types of lawsuits that she had to experience. I mean, it was scary actually on some of those pieces on what she had to fight and some of the things. It kind of got you thinking. It kind of got you a little worried because there were some small details that I'm sure all of us are overlooking, and you just never think that it would ever pop up.
Yeah, Council for Exceptional Children and LRP, also CASE, Council for Administrators of Special Education, I think.
Education, yeah.
Those are also, LRP has great trainings, CASE does, and CEC are all great resources. Also, I think we already shared those modules, probably the last session or the session before, on the Gen Ed Special Ed Partnerships. That really helps. It's a good they're two good modules for having gen ed teachers and special ed teachers work together and kind of helping gen ed teachers understand their role in the special education process. I'll never forget, I was doing a corrective action plan training down in a district, and it was mostly gen ed staff in addition to a couple special ed staff. And I had an administrator and a gen ed teacher come up to me and say, wow, I had no idea that special education teachers had to do all of this and had to know all of this. They had no idea. And it kind of stuck with me because I realized that people probably don't always realize all the things that special ed teachers and directors need to know.
So there's a great conference that's coming up in the fall. It is the Pacific Northwest Institute on SPED and the Law, and that's regional. Like, they cover things that are coming out of the Ninth Circuit that are really relevant to Idaho. They cover things that are relevant to this region. I also put the link in for LRP. They are an excellent resource. I believe, well, I don't remember exactly the logistics of if we are going to get access to that on a state level, but they have something called the Special Ed Connection. I don't know if any of you receive that. It's like a daily newsletter. It's a subscription-based resource, and they are releasing information, one pages every day related to case law that's coming out a lot across the country related to special education. So that's a great resource as well. I'm going to drop the link for the CEC. They have incredibly great resources as well. Their conference is generally in the spring. Hold 1 second.
I'll get those. You keep talking. I'm working on the
Okay.
links.
Okay. So I really appreciate that mindset. Like sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so having conversations with people who are in the same positions as us that have built systems or have resources that they're accessing, networking, like you said, those are incredibly powerful ways to increase our own knowledge and look at things a little bit differently. How can I improve the things that are happening in my building? What's my friend doing across town, right? Or even across the state. Can you go to the next slide, Vanessa?
Yep.
Thank you. So when we look at those things that we just talked about, those barriers to us being able to provide special education meaningfully, consistently, having those kinds of staff shortages, alternate authorization difficulties, they impact students, right? If we're not able to support students, students are not able to get support, right? That is a pretty general thing that we all struggle with. We can't do the things for kids if we don't have enough hands to do the work. So that is the first and foremost impact, but it also creates pressure for our gen ed colleagues. And that can create a divide within our buildings when we talk about like being siloed and special education kind of maybe not always being understood by our gen ed teachers. Sometimes that's not because they don't have the information. Sometimes it's because they're grumpy that they're having to do all of this extra work. And that's a real and reasonable way to feel. They don't have this background. They don't understand the nuances or the requirements. And a lot of this work might get handed off to them when there are shortages. And so what do we do about that? Well, there's a couple of things. We could try to have less shortages, and that's a great universal wish for all of us to have, but what do we do, right? We can look at, well, I want to hear from you guys. Talk to me about your gen ed teachers, and is there pushback that you get when we're talking about not having enough special education staff and them having to take on other responsibilities that maybe they're not comfortable with or trained for? Is that ever happening?
My teachers never complain.
That's amazing. I
No,
love that.
I think we get where I'm at right now, where we get a lot of pushback is when the data collection piece, when
Yeah.
we're looking for a possible referral, and I
Okay.
don't, and we're kind of just working through that. I don't know that that's necessarily because of any shortage, but yeah, that data collection is where we, try when we're considering someone,
And
what we have to do with.
tell me more about that because I'm interested in what part they're struggling with.
Well, we have a learning management system. That's part of it. Is
Okay.
we entering that data into a learning management system and providing enough. I guess it takes a little bit of patience that we have enough data gathered before
Oh, I see.
we
So
make the initial referral
the
for.
justification for there are a lot of things to consider when we're looking at a comprehensive evaluation for a student, right? Like we have to justify, did they
Yeah.
receive appropriate instruction? are the rest of the students also responding to the curriculum and instruction that's being delivered for tier one? I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and I deal only with my school is preschool through first grade, so they're all younger students and they don't have, the previous years of data collected. So we're starting that, and yeah. So that's part of it. So but I don't know that necessarily staff shortage is part of that. I think it's some of that is building interventions into the classroom that we've talked about in the past modules
Sure,
that's
sure.
tricky for especially new teachers who are alternatively authorized, especially who I don't know.
Well, some things that we can talk. I'm going to send you some, Dave, let's talk about this after class because I think I hear what you're saying and it is peripheral to what we're talking about today, but also something to address. And there are a couple of resources that might be beneficial. So hang tight after class and we can talk about that. Some things that we can look at as solutions. We could think about compensation, right? I realize that within the budgetary structure of each school, everybody wants more compensation. That is an overarching reality of work, right? Like we want to be compensated appropriately for the job that we do. It's important that we take a look at what that looks like. Stipends, I think we talked about this in one of our first class sessions. We all get the same standard contract when we're working in a school. And there's always that tricky little line that's hidden within it that says, here are all of your responsibilities and all other duties as assigned. As an administrator, I would encourage you to think about the weight of what we're asking our special education teachers to do. Are we putting 10 pounds of work into a 5-pound bag and then using that all duties as otherwise assigned as the rationale for this needs to be completed as part of your daily work, right? Like, let's look at compensation from the standpoint of what's the lift that this person is doing. That's one solution. Is it going to fix everything? No. Mentorship is another thing that we can talk about. Do we have a solid mentor program, especially when we're talking about alternate authorization candidates who are going through that interim period of 3 years? They don't necessarily have a background in education. That's a huge lift for them. Just to be a general education teacher on an alternate authorization is hard. To be a special education teacher on an alternate authorization is drinking from the fire hydrant, right? Like you have to learn all the things and do them immediately. So what kind of mentorship program do we have set up within our building to support the needs of that very new person that's doing this very important work? Again, we talked about professional development. There are lots of opportunities for that. But again, checking in with who your colleagues are, right? Other administrators in other buildings and LEAs, check and see what they do. Ask questions, network, like Jaren said. These are incredibly, all of these things look different from building to building, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of resources that already exist that other people either have built or have implemented that you could borrow and improve or adjust to support the needs in your building.
And let's ask the teachers too what they need, right? It's not just about, I mean, we're all communicative, right? So teachers will let you know what they need to be successful, to feel valued, to feel like they're part of the community, and to not be so stressed out. It's a lot. So definitely all the things that you've mentioned, but I think we need to also ask the teachers what is it that you need from me as an administrator?
Promotion of inclusive education. When we say that, we are talking about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, building things from the ground up that are the most accessible for the most amount of people. I know that's a tricky one, and that's not one that we could just do immediately, but beginning with that in mind can be incredibly helpful. Streamlining your paperwork process. Dave, you talked about that referral process kind of being tricky and gen ed teachers maybe having struggling a little bit at the front of that when they're trying to refer students for special education. Looking at that paperwork process and making sure that our system is working and manageable for our teachers is the place to start there, right? Everybody understands it. Everybody knows the why. Sometimes they don't understand the rationale why these things need to happen, and that can cause some resistance as well. So things to consider related to our paperwork process.
We talked about this already. Do you want to
Yes, we did.
move on?
All right.
Do you have a suggestion for a streamlined paperwork process?
Yes, I do.
That is the biggest question.
Well, so one of the resources I have is it was made specifically for SLD, but really it can be tailored for any category. It was tailored for SLD because there's so many specific things. So let me pull those links up. It's while Steph's talking about other resources, but what it does is it essentially makes it so that by the time you get to referral to consider a special education evaluation, the special education team has all the information they need from the Gen Ed MTSS team, right? Because it's, again, function of Gen Ed. There is a photograph of me on a table stating that that is a function of general education MTSS because 2 people got it wrong on the Kahoot after 6 hours of training. So I feel very strongly about that in case anybody had any questions. It is a function of Gen Ed. I have resources. And unfortunately, what happens is because Gen Ed and some Gen Ed administrators aren't aware of their responsibility, it's very stressful for special ed teachers and psychologists who get not the data they need. They get, bits of information, but they're not packaged in a way that are beneficial and helpful for the special education team. This puts everything in a nice, I think I think you're the one that likes to say, puts it in a package with a bow and hands
Wrap it up.
to
Yep.
that team. Wrapping it up. Yeah. So I'll pull those links while Steph keeps talking.
All right. So
I
how do
can't
we
click and
support our,
talk.
say again?
I said, because I can't click and talk.
Oh. All right. So supporting our special education teachers. We have heard a little bit about alternate authorization today. This is data that we pulled from the Department of Education's website here in Idaho. Vanessa, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. This is for our 2024-25 school year. It's the most recent data that we could pull. Out of the almost 22,000 certified teachers in the state of Idaho, about 10.5% are working under either a non-traditional certificate, an alternate authorization, or an emergency provisional certificate. So now, when you're working, so that's a lot, right? Let's go to the next slide because that's what I really want to talk about. When we look at these authorizations, there's an interim term, right? Where like they are able to receive this authorization and then they have a period of time to complete whatever work and mentorship program is needed to then get a just generic regular certificate. Like their certification doesn't say interim on it anymore after that 3-year period. We don't have any data to capture how many people have cycled through that. So this is just the data for 1 year of how many people were offered new authorizations under that. But think about 10% of the teachers in the state are on some kind of alternative path. And then after 3 years, they just are captured within the pool of regular certifications. We don't know what the educational background for those teachers looks like. That is a huge skill gap for some. When you work through those mentorship programs within your alternate authorization, like ABCTE or any of those, that 3 years of mentorship is required. And you're really just doing that while you're working, right? It's on the job training that you're receiving. That doesn't mean that that's sufficient enough to support what you're going to be doing through the rest of your teaching career. And so I want to bring this up because it's super important for us to recognize as we plan that professional development for our teachers, those skill gaps and knowledge gaps are real and they exist. And so what can we do to support this need in general? What kind of mentorship programs are we developing, and what are the components of those? When we have strong mentors who have strong knowledge and skills that are tried and true, we know that that provides opportunities for new teachers to stay, right? They're more willing to remain in the field if they feel supported by people who understand their needs and are responsive to them. So if we can build a high quality mentor program, that increases our ability to keep those teachers in the classroom, right? So a couple of things that we can do. Go back one, Vanessa.
I was getting excited, sorry.
That collaboration time is incredibly important, right? And not just, and sometimes we say collaboration time, and that's time where we're grading or we're writing IEPs or we're doing those things. I'm not talking about that. That's prep and work time. True collaboration time is when we are sitting 1-to-1, 1-to-3, whatever that ratio looks like, and talking deeply about what it is our job is and how we're doing it, right? Sitting that time to truly collaborate about challenges, barriers, difficulties, or even when things are going great, like that time is invaluable. And so building that time in is incredibly important. Also, observations, mini observations, modeling of our teaching skills in front of these teachers, beside these teachers, and then doing frequent check-ins with them in a positive way and not a punitive one is incredibly important. We do this with our students all the time. The needs of teachers sometimes aren't that different, right? Sometimes we need to see it done, to understand it, and then to replicate it. And so that modeling piece is incredibly important as well. When we talk about IEP meetings and paperwork, just kind of throwing our brand new alternate authorization teachers into the deep end of the swimming pool, that could be tricky. What does your mentorship program look like? And what kind of supports have been built in for that piece? Because then we're not just talking about work in the classroom at that point. We've got parents at the table. We've got legal binding paperwork that's being completed, developed, implemented. How are we supporting that process for our new teachers that are in their mentorship years? Anybody have anything that they have that's working great that they'd like to share?
I know for me, with some of my special education teachers, we have dedicated times on Wednesday mornings that we get together and meet. And we actually, and I'm a school psychologist, so we actually don't meet with the administrators at that time. And we really kind of like dig into like the nitty gritty of how we can support each other. And it's a time for us to kind of be like free with our conversations. So no offense to administrators, but it's a good time for us. And then we meet a couple times a month with administrators where we can go back and then talk through some of our issues that we have, and hopefully they will support us. Not always, of course, because there's always time and money. But those are some of the things that we do.
Rachel, I really appreciate that. And coming from, my background is in small schools here in Idaho. Our school psychologist was such an invaluable resource to us, and our administration made sure that there was time built into that person's contract so that a lot of times she was a mentor in some ways. There are some things that a school psychologist might not know related to special education teachers, but when we talk about comprehensive evaluation and we talk about all of those mechanisms, that's an incredibly important piece to teach individuals who did not go through the traditional route to become a teacher. That is an incredibly underused resource, using the knowledge and background of your school psychologist to support that professional development. I would encourage you to consider how you could integrate that knowledge into professional development for your entire building, even because general education teachers need to understand the why behind what this comprehensive evaluation is for. We're seeing more and more of these referrals come through. They're a part of that team. They need to understand that as well.
I was just going to throw into for Pocatello, one thing that we do, well, we do a couple things. We have a really robust mentor program, and that's super beneficial, but we also do what we call camps. There's grade level camps for gen ed, and then we have special ed camps. So our resource room teachers go to one camp, and our special programs like our ERR classrooms go to another camp. And they just really, my consulting teachers and I, when I'm needed, will like just talk about what are the issues coming up, what are the things they need to know to be successful. We pay them a stipend to come to those. It is after contract hours, so we pay them if they come to the camps. It doesn't cost very much, but what they get in those couple of hours once a month is really invaluable. I think to the profession and to helping them. It's hard to mandate that they come, so we do offer the stipend, but what we have found is those that don't come do seek out the information. If they can't come to one, they'll reach out to another SPED teacher that they know was there and try and gather information and just find out if they missed anything pertinent. But those camps every year tend to get a little bit bigger, which is amazing. We love that, but that's just one way we try to get something to them on a regular basis.
Thanks, Jill. I love that. Vanessa, can you pop down to slide 17?
Working on it. I don't have numbers. Is that 17?
Nope, next one. All right. So some
Okay,
of that,
wait, can I interrupt real quick?
totally.
Okay, I'm really excited about this one thing because somebody asked a question about what can we do to make sure that our MTSS teams are okay. They didn't say it like this, but I interpreted it as how do we wrap everything up in a nice bow? So I'm going to take it that way. And let me just share a couple. So I put these links in the chat, and let me just share real quick. The first one, well, I don't know what the first one was, but one of them is referral guidance when specific learning disability is suspected. This can be adapted to whatever, to all disabilities, right? You don't have to use it because problem-solving teams are supposed to take place regardless of, right, the type of disabilities. So basically, it's a review of the student information, vision concerns, hearing concerns, making sure that somebody's looking at that cumulative file and making sure that they've extracted all the really important information from there. Parents have been notified that that the student is receiving a tiered system of support. Exclusionary factors. There's a link here to the exclusionary factors guidance document, which helps teams sort through if it's a primary or contributing factor in the student's case. Areas of concern, of course, you would add other areas as needed, right? This can be edited, you can edit this. Impact on educational performance, right? So what is the gen ed teacher seeing in the classroom? The parent concerns. There's a graphing resource, which I'll get to in a second, with a narrative template example. And then, of course, one of my favorite, the link, remember the link was dead 2 sessions ago or the first session? They're back up and live, the MTSS website. I was talking about MTSS for Success. It's the Center on Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. So if you need any resources on MTSS, this is like the place to go. So this graph that I was talking about, it's linked in a couple different resources. All the MTSS team has to do is put in the date, the week number. So, maybe you're doing it every other week. Then you can either do correct words per minute, you can do percent correct. The aim line is just that goal. So you want the first score to match the percent correct. There's a little note in there because everyone emails me and says that the graph's not working. It's because they didn't put this number in here. And then the goal is right here. It graphs it here for you. So you can see that you've got your aim line, right? Your grade level norms are up here, and this is percent correct. And then the trend line. So everything you need, right, is all done for you. And then also it does, you can put notes. The notes will show up in the graph. I haven't figured out how to do that for Excel people. There is an Excel option. I don't know how to put the notes on the graph. So if someone does, let me know and I'll add it. But then rate of improvement. So you can see what is the student's personal rate of improvement on the score. So this is a great tool for MTSS teams to use. And it can be used for behavior. It can be used for academics, whatever it is that you need to measure. There's directions here. Just email me if you have questions or if you need help with it. I try to make it easy so you could click points, number correct, percent correct, correct words per minute, whatever you want. All you have to do is double click on that and you can start you can double click and then you can start typing Vanessa's reading goal or whatever you want it to be. If you could type and talk at the same time. So you can change that percent correct. You just double click on that and you change that. So it's all easy to do. The other resource, sorry, one more, where'd it go? I pulled them all up. This progress monitoring practice guide was really intended for MTSS teams to use. It goes through all the criteria. It's specific again to SLD, but it's good for all the things. It explains what is required. It explains how to identify goals for the students, and it gives you resources on that. And then what I really also like about it is it has example where it has this narrative template. So sometimes our MTSS teams aren't quite sure how to write up the narrative of the student's response to intervention, and this is a template for that. So these are some resources that your MTSS teams can use, and they were designed to put everything in a nice, pretty package with a bow for the special education team. If they don't give it to them in this nice package, then there's probably should be some bubbly beverage or some chocolate or some bribe or something, because this is really what the team needs to do their job. And it's really time consuming for special education teachers to have to track down all of the data that they need in order to do their jobs. And that's, when I say it's really time consuming, that's an understatement. It is quite challenging. So this is designed to make it as easy as possible for those teams. And if you have any questions on how to use the resources, send us an email and we're happy to help you. Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Oh, I saw Stacy's note. I thought she said now to get the MTSS going. I thought she was saying like, hurry up and get on with the rest of the show. I'm working on it. I got to find the other share button. There we go. Okay.
All right. So some of the ways that we can embed that instructional support for our mentor programs is co-planning. We talked about that at length. Purposeful, scheduled collaboration and planning time. And that is beneficial for everybody, not just our people who are working through an alternate authorization. If you can build this culture within your building, that is incredibly helpful for every teacher. Modeling, again, pairing individuals who are experienced, tried and true veteran teachers with our newer teachers so they can see and then do, incredibly helpful. And then looking at those action plans to support the needs of the teachers and listening to them tell you what they need. And then also recognizing that sometimes they might not know either. So having those other positions to support our new special education teachers, mentor teachers, consulting teachers, instructional coaches, all of those people that might exist within our buildings, using that wealth of knowledge to develop and implement action plans to support those teachers are incredibly helpful. And then the other side, which is how to help them and support them emotionally. When we talk about these jobs, and I would say that administrators have these needs too. Their needs just get met through other means, right? But all of us who work in any job have the need for emotional support related to what we're doing, right? Like we're doing this good work. we have feelings about it sometimes, and we have feelings about the challenges that occur within our jobs. And so if we don't feel like we have a safe place to go to talk about that, that can make our job harder. So a couple of things to consider when we're talking about supporting our special education staff and our staff in general, right? On the administrative end, listening to them actively without judgment, validating what they're saying. I hear you. My daughter played softball for years, from 7 years old until she went into college, right? And one of the things that I learned within that softball culture, aside from the parents being incredibly loud and chanting all the time, is they used this language where her coaches would say things to her like, I see you. And I listened to this. I'm watching, right? I'm a mom on the sidelines. And I'm watching and I'm thinking to myself, that is an incredibly powerful thing to say to another person, right? Not just a child who's learning, but to another adult. It's a better message than nice work, good job. It reflects empathy. It shows I have been where you are and I understand where you're coming from. I see your work. I see the good things you're doing. And so I started to implement that into my own work, right, as an administrator. And it felt really good. And I felt like the people that I worked with appreciated it. And so some things to consider: the kind of language we use, right? Not performative, but actually meaningful. I see the work that you're doing. Nice, you know? And then communicating with your staff that challenges are normal. We all have barriers. We all have things that we're working through. Sometimes we don't do the right thing either. And that's a totally normal human mechanism. We shouldn't act like it's the end of the world if we have a bad day or something goes sideways. Let's address it, name it, move on from it. How do we fix it for next time? Getting stuck in that little eddy of failure is that can be really hard to manage emotionally. So our job as administrators is to talk people through that and help them come out on the other end, right? The only way out is through. Be encouraging. Again, we want to reduce that isolation, talk about that collaboration piece. We don't want anybody to be siloed and feel like they can't go talk to somebody else, or they're on this island all by themselves doing this work alone. Talking about their work-life balance. Again, what's the capacity look like for their overall job? These are things that we can do on the administrative end, or at least have conversations with them about. Really listen to what they're telling us so that we can support them emotionally. When we talk about supervision and evaluation of special education teachers, that sometimes looks a lot different than what we would be evaluating when we look at a general education teacher and their work. And so if we as administrators don't understand those nuances, it can be tricky when it comes time to evaluate. So let's talk about it. How do you feel about your understanding of special education in relation to this piece, right? The supervision and evaluation of your special education teachers. Do you find it to be tricky? Do you think it's easy? Have you had great success? Is it like a one-to-one for you? Talk to me.
I actually found this year was incredibly difficult. It's the first time I've had to evaluate a special education teacher. And we're using Danielson's, and this teacher doesn't have any classes that he teaches directly. It's all in classroom support. And so there's that mismatch of the evaluation tool and then being able to, and what I'm actually seeing, and trying to provide meaningful feedback and also a score was actually quite challenging. We figured it out, but I would love some guidance on how to make it more successful for both of us.
I'm so excited that you talked about Danielson. Vanessa is going to talk about that shortly. I
Only
agree.
because I drew the short straw.
I think that is Lisa, that's probably a pretty universal feeling. I would guess that there are other administrators who also find it tricky because the jobs are so different and they're all different within each building as well, right? Like different buildings have different makeups of students and staff. And so there is not a one-to-one when we're talking about the evaluation of a special education teacher. Those roles all look very different. So we want to, as much as we can, tailor those evaluations to our special education teachers for our special education teachers. Did anyone else have anything to share before we move on? Okay.
I'm trying to get in here fast. So is the state ever going to come up with an evaluation form that's going to fit that? I'm just going to ask it because I'm sure everybody's asking themselves the same question. This will be my 5th year in Idaho, and being in small schools, I have yet to see anything. I got something this year that actually was a Danielson break off that somebody created that I used that was more forthright to the way we're looking at our SPED. Brandy, I will share that with you. But outside of that, when I go through the Danielson teaching rubrics, I'm like, where does this even fit into this concept? And so people have asked me, and so now I'm asking you, when is the state going to come out with that evaluation form that we can use universally that's going to fit that profile of a special education instructor?
I would love to be able to answer that for you. It is definitely something that we can bring back to leadership and they can take to the Department of Education. I don't have an answer. I apologize. I hear you and I understand the struggle. It is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. There is not a lot of alignment, right?
Well, it's also not really fair to the job duties of what we're seeing. That's the hard part. I'm sure you're trying to mix and match, and I don't think that they get a fair assessment of what their roles are, especially in Brandy and I's situation, because we share a half timer. It's just the roles are different. You already said it, tailoring. And so our teaching evaluation has nothing to do with what her role is.
Yes. So,
and I think that's extremely difficult when I'm trying to evaluate my extended resource room teachers.
yes.
When my rubric is talking about rich discussion among students and peers, when I'm walking into a classroom where a third of those learners are nonverbal or emerging verbal skills. And so I feel like I have these exceptional humans in these classrooms that have exceptional instruction, and I'm trying to figure out how to justify that in this rubric that I then have to submit to my district and to my state.
One of the nice things about that, really quick, is those are relative terms, right? When we're reading that, we have the ability as administrators. This is not helpful in what Jared was asking, but it is semantics that we're talking about. It is relative. When we talk about rich, tell me your language again that you just said, Cynthia.
I believe it's the way the wording is that there's a rich peer-to-peer discussion. And so, when I look at that, that's kind of how I have that's what I have to tell myself is this is a matter of semantics. I need to take that peer-to-peer interaction based on the context of this classroom. And so now if I were ever to get audited, I'm sure I would have to explain that. Or I would assume, I don't know, but I just don't feel like it matches what I'm seeing in those classrooms. And I feel like there are many areas that we could focus on improvement and better areas of observation that just don't fit in that Danielson framework.
Agreed. And it also doesn't make your job easier, right? And that's not something that you're able to employ with fidelity then if you're having to relatively define it for these different, like very nuanced situations. So absolutely, we hear what you're saying. We have some tools for you. Can you go to the next slide, Vanessa?
Working on it.
Please and thank you. So consider, what are the key differences between a special education responsibility related to a teacher and gen ed responsibilities, and how are you taking those into consideration? Well, we kind of just talked about that, right? We talked about relative terms and looking at those nuances, but let's talk about some actual tools that you can utilize to support that. I'm going to hand it off to Vanessa because she is going to talk about Danielson. And just full disclosure, we are not, this isn't a Danielson training. These are just some resources that we know about to support the use of that framework for evaluation purposes. All right, Vanessa, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just, Rebecca stuck a chat in there, and I was just curious what I was taking a look at that. Yeah, there's lots of alternate rubrics out there. I think what is tricky is, all the things you mentioned, right? And I was fortunate, I've always, I think, been fortunate to have really creative administrators who were really flexible when they were writing my evaluations based on Danielson criteria. So there's some extended examples, right, on the special ed scenarios. For students with autism, multiple disabilities, behavioral disabilities, mild, moderate disabilities, including universal design for learning, right? Data-driven instruction, behavioral strategies, really promoting student independence, because of course that is our ultimate goal here. Collaboration with the entire team, not just staying in that silo, right? Using assistive and adaptive technology, looking at our AEM, or accessible educational materials, and then of course oversight of paraprofessionals and FERPA, right? Confidentiality practices. One thing that I think we sometimes forget about is the challenge of that some SPED teachers have when there's a large group of paras and they're responsible for supervision of that. And sometimes it can get a little bit hairy, right? And generally speaking, special education teachers do not have training in how to supervise and sort of navigate that world. And so really just making sure that we're supporting there as well, as a side note. I love this next slide talking about mini observations, because I think that is how my administrators were able to write really descriptive and well done evaluations, was because they knew what I was doing all the time. They were always walking in, they were always welcome into the classroom. I wasn't stressed out when they came in because they would leave little notes on my desk like, hey, I noticed that you were able to redirect, Johnny when blah, 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 blah. And I really appreciated that. I also really appreciated that we were able to observe, not just be observed, but also observe each other. And I think that culture of observation and feeling and that trust and kind of community is really helpful because it helps us grow as educators. But this rapport and trust with teachers through those really frequent informal check-ins helps them know that sometimes it feels like when you're in special ed that administrators have no idea what you do. And so when you're walking alongside your special education teachers, I think that's really beneficial. You guys know how to do many observations, right? But many observations are mini, right? It's sort of you're just driving by, checking things out. It's nice to set a goal, like have a plan of action so that there's a kind of it's not just always spontaneous, but you're making sure you're intentional about your observations, you have a plan for it, and you're able to actually complete those observations, because you guys are busy, we're all busy, right? But actually planning to do it and setting aside the time to do it is really helpful. Be clear about what you're looking for those observations, being systematic. Feedback face-to-face always offers that two-way conversation. And then use the data, right? There's no point in having data if you don't use it. So using those mini observations for professional development and linking that to student results, of course, is always helpful. I think at the end of the day, knowing, what your guys' jobs and days look like, they're so packed, right? And so finding time to do that can always be challenging. Most of my administrators that I've worked for, at least the ones that are coming to mind, had a habit of walking through the building at twice a day at minimum, and just stopping off in every single classroom to check in. And I think that was a really nice way of kind of just making sure that those mini observations took place. Of course, things always happened and there's always fires to put out. And so saying that you're going to do that and then actually doing it didn't always happen, but the thought was there, right? Um, SOTEL, right? So you're looking for safety, clear objectives, you know where you're going. The teaching is skillful, right? We're looking at masterful teaching. The students are engaged, they're paying attention, they're involved. Whatever they're doing is meaningful to them. And then of course they're learning what's being taught, right? That said, I will say that sometimes what is being taught is different for different students in the same group. It might be that Johnny is just learning to sit in class, and the expectation is that they just sit there and that they are looking like a student. Maybe they're not doing any work. They might not be reading. They might not be doing the worksheet. They might not be participating in small group activities, but they're sitting in class, and that is a win for that student. And so as administrators, it's really important that the students too, right? And that just because Johnny is sitting and not doing any work doesn't mean that the teacher's not doing their job, because that is the win of the day for that particular student, right? And so I think a lot of times I've heard teachers talk about how they're nervous that when administrators come in, they don't understand necessarily all of the dynamics and the things that are going on in the classroom, and it might look like this or it might look like that, but there's a reason behind it. And so when you have those that relationship and that trust built in, then you can have those conversations. And sometimes it's helpful too, just as to be a thought partner for your special education teacher when there's something going on and they're just trying to figure out how to best deal with the situation. That's one way you can do it. Also, when you're making these really short observations coming in, you're also building rapport with students. And so as a side note, not about observations, but I'd rather talk about work with students, obviously, than observations. So we'll go that way. But it's an opportunity to make those connections, and for the students to see you as somebody who's supportive and somebody that you can have a positive relationship with in the school, not just the person you go to when you're in trouble, right? Everything, all these SOTEL objectives, right? Everything I'm seeing in there, I just think to myself of universal design for learning. If we're just thinking about universally designing our lessons, right? We're removing barriers for all learners. We're planning our lessons with learner variability in mind. We're making sure that there's multiple ways to gain information, multiple ways to share what we know, and multiple ways to be engaged. We're doing good work, right? And that engagement piece is so important. I think in special ed, it's really, especially if you have a pull-out classroom, it can be really difficult to recreate that really engaging classroom environment of a gen ed classroom. And so it really takes a lot, I think, on the work of the gen ed teacher, or sorry, let me start that sentence over. It takes a lot of work on the part of the special education teachers to really ensure that their learners are engaged, because sometimes there are other reasons why that student might not be engaged, and you have maybe a bunch of students that aren't very wanting to be engaged in that same group, just because of the dynamics. And so it takes a lot, but it's also probably one of the most important things that the special education teachers can do, right, is really make sure that the learners are engaged and learning. Otherwise, the rest of it doesn't matter. Let's see. When you're looking at, do you guys remember SDI, specially designed instruction? So when we are looking at instruction of special education teachers, we're looking at those changes to content methodology and or delivery of instruction, right? And so making sure that as administrators, you're familiar with what SDI is, the students' IEPs, and what changes those teachers are making to the instruction content or methodology to benefit the learners. All right, anyone want to share out about how they're using mini observations or how you could see yourself using mini observations in your role?
I have I do a couple of things. First, I have a note card for every teacher, and I give the note cards to my assistant, and I say, please place 2 of these on my desk. And I don't get, and then I just see it every day. I need to see those 2 teachers, and I date the dates that I go see them. And it just, that way I kind of keep track of who's being seen. But I have someone else I'm accountable for. I'm like, okay, I got them done. I give them to her. And I'm like, okay, I need some more now. So that's just a useful thing for me, just making sure I get it done. And then I also have uh, specific things I'm looking for. So I just have some sheets already printed out. So I can just grab them, put on my clipboard, I go and watch, and then I can write some notes down. Say, hey guys, yeah, this is what we're working on. Good job. But I always try to give the positive in the immediate feedback. And then if I see patterns of things that need to be addressed overall, I can to the whole staff or address it when we have more of a one-on-one evaluation conversation. Because
I love that because
as in our district, we're not allowed to use our mini observations in our final evaluation. So if we use mini observations, we have to do an hour-long observation as per contract. So I try to use them as going along. Anyway.
it's a great way to add that other information. One time, I had an administrator who, um, I was teaching us, I think either 6th or 7th or 8th grade, I can't remember, language arts at a middle school, and it was resource class. And I had to teach language by Soper's West, which the lesson, and I had to teach the lessons the way they were in the book, right? And the lesson was reading, I had an armadillo on the book, but I had to read the story to these middle schoolers, right? That was part of the lesson. And it took the entire 45 felt like it. There's probably some other stuff, but basically this administrator is watching me read to middle schoolers for the whole, and I think he was late. That's why he missed most of it. So most of the actual lesson. So he's watching me read to middle schoolers. I'm like, how on earth, how, like, I'm trying to be as engaging, as dramatic as I can possibly be, because like, this is literally my 1 year, evaluation. And it just felt absolutely ridiculous. It's nice to have, those mini observations so that they know what you're doing the rest of the time, that you don't just sit there and read to middle schoolers for the entire lesson. So thankfully, he also knew other things that I did, but that was, I'll never forget that. That felt very ridiculous in my opinion. I plan on focusing on one aspect of the domains. Yeah, helps you filter what you're looking for and allows you to provide some meaningful feedback. Just like what we do with students, right? That immediate feedback that I noticed what you're doing and something specific is really beneficial, right? Not just, hey, good job, you're awesome. That doesn't tell us anything, right? Teachers want really specific, like I noticed that you, I think I used their example of redirecting before, but I noticed that you saw that Johnny was, had a certain error in their math calculation, or that they caught this, and you were able to, you know, explain the error and then backtrack and have them redo it and practice correctly, because of course we don't want our students practicing incorrectly. So I think that I'm struggling with my words today. The most specific you can be, right, when you're providing feedback is really, really helpful, just like we would do with students. I'm going to move on to the next slide because I don't have to talk on this one, somebody else is. So that's good. And here we have David Bateman, who's going to talk about monitoring that IEP implementation. I'm pretty sure I'm sharing the sound, so let me know if you can't hear it. Fingers are crossed.
Administrators need to monitor IEP fidelity because if there's a discipline action, the first thing we often look at is the IEP being implemented as it's
working on it.
If there's
Administrators
complaint
need
from a
to
parent,
monitor IEP
I can't
fidelity
even hear.
at
Can you
because
guys
the
hear it?
IEP being
if
implemented
there's a
as a
discipline
standard
action,
if
the first
there's
thing we
a
often
need
look
to think
at
about
is the
changing
IEP being
services,
implemented.
Vanessa,
Because the
Mhm.
child
if
there's
there's
like a
even
double
financial
overlap,
transparency,
so it's playing
we look
twice.
at is the
Oh.
IEP being implemented as it
Well,
was
I
written.
can't hear it at all, so I
So
was just frantically
IEP
pressing buttons
fidelity,
until
we need to
it
remind
played. So let's
administrators
try
and
this one. You
teachers
guys give me a thumbs
that
up because I
once
can't
the
hear a
IEP
thing.
meeting is over, that's just the beginning. We think about getting the signatures on the
I
IEP
know.
as the most important part, but actually the most important part is actually the implementation. It's very similar to, for lack of a better term, campaigns. And someone's running for president. Yeah, they spend an enormous amount of time campaigning, but the big thing is actually running of the program that they've campaigned for afterwards, similar to an IEP. It's implementing the program afterwards and making changes as you go through. The team has agreed on what the goals and what the program is for a child. The team has also agreed on how much time it is going to take for the child to receive these special education services. And we need to at least give it opportune time to be implemented. And if there are changes that need to be made, then we make the changes later. But we need to see if we can implement what the team has agreed to. And if it can't be, then we reconvene the team and we make changes as a result of what we've observed. But we don't have anything to go on unless we've at least tried this. So the fidelity of the implementation of the IEP is actually one of the more important parts, because everything legally then will come back to, did you implement how many times a child is supposed to receive speech services? Did you actually work on the goals that were listed in the IEP? Did you provide the accommodations in the general education classroom that were listed there? These are questions that will be part of what's going on. I'm a former due process hearing officer, and I witnessed many times attorneys questioning teachers and administrators about the implementation of the IEP. Yeah, you had a good IEP, but did you actually implement it? And if you have a great IEP and you don't implement it, that's not defensible. Principals should monitor the implementation of an IEP. This might be delegated to a case manager. What I recommend for principals is that they periodically
Is it
meet with
over?
their
I'm trying to read
special
facial
education
expressions.
staff.
It's not going well.
Increasingly, I'm seeing districts that are going on a 9-week schedule with 4 9-week marketing periods. About halfway through the first marketing period, after the IEP is being implemented, just sit down with the teachers just for 5-10 minutes. We're not talking long. Just poll a few select IEPs and ask the teacher, is this happening? Is this not happening? If it's not, then what can we do to make sure it does happen? It's a quick conversation, and it's not done in a punitive fashion. It's done just to make sure that we're implementing what's going on. Because in the end, it's the principals who this comes back on. And as the leader of the building, they're the ones who need to make sure that all the programs within their building are being implemented as they're supposed to be.
It's over now, Vanessa.
Thanks. You're muted. Thanks for that, Stacey. I saw you. That was the most awkward 3 minutes, I think, of my life, because I couldn't hear a thing, and I was like staring at Janelle because Janelle looked like she was paying attention, but then Janelle turned her head, and I thought that meant that it was over. Janelle, man, I was reading your body language and you left me down. Very disappointed. Darn it. Thanks, Stacey, for giving me the sign. I appreciate it. Okay. So making sure that we are as administrators, helping our special education teachers implement those IEPs with fidelity. What does that look like for you? Any ahas from the, I want to say video, from the audio that I couldn't hear?
The fact that it's the principal's responsibility to ensure that all IEPs are implemented. As the special education teacher, I thought that all was on me. So I mean, just feeling like I can talk to the principal and say, so-and-so is not following this IEP accommodation. What can we do about that kind of thing?
It's not just on us, right? It's a whole team. What else?
I'm wondering, is there anyone out there who actually does an IEP review to see if it's being implemented? Do they do that during like an MDT meeting, problem solving team? Like, when do they do that? And so, like, how?
It's a great question. I've got tools, but I have the same question. Are you guys doing
Well, the practice, so a couple of different things to consider, right? If we know that, well, it can happen in lots of different ways, right? Like one of the biggest impediments to an IEP being implemented is some of those barriers that we talked about earlier, right? Like scheduling, staffing, things that are popping up that we don't have a system or process to address, like field trips and assemblies and things like that. Any of those things that are impeding on services being delivered is the lack of implementation of an IEP, right? We don't have a SPED teacher for the day. Services aren't being delivered. The IEP is not being implemented. We have a behavior intervention plan, but nobody's read it and there's no person that's supporting the student with those interventions. That's non-implementation of the behavior intervention plan, which is part of the IEP. So if we're talking about how we're monitoring those things, it goes back to those other systems that are already built in, right? How are we monitoring our staffing? How are we monitoring our minutes that are being delivered? Who has access to the IEP? Like those are all things that should hopefully be baked in and have a system. And then we're using that information to support our observation or implementation checks for that student. Does that answer your question?
I think she wanted to know who's doing it here,
Oh, well,
but I'm also deaf, so with a lowercase d. Michelle?
I was gonna say, I'm a SPED director and resource teacher, so I kind of have double duties there. I've been looking for a way to track and monitor how our IEPs are being done, because first off, I'm the only one in our district, the only teacher right now. We're having a new one come next year, but there's been things going on around us at other school districts that, you know, the states had to come in, and there's been lawsuits and stuff about parents saying that their child isn't receiving their services from their specialists. And so I've been looking into programs, and there's several out there where you can track and put all of that information. We're looking at the one Able Space, because, you know, and we did a trial study or trial use of another one, Journify. They're both really good programs to help monitor some of that. Able Space I like because you're able to actually go in and have all of your team put in the minutes that they're working with each individual student. They can put notes in, all of that stuff. And so then I can go back to my superintendent, my principal, and show them, hey, this is what's being done.
That's a great resource, and thank you for bringing that up. And that actually reminds me, I was working with another SESTA coordinator on creating a Google form to essentially do the same thing, but for free. And the one that she was asking for help on involved, I think, IEP goals, but it would be very easy to add service minutes, location, whatever information notes, whatever you needed into that Google form. Just because some people don't have the funds for, I don't know how much that one costs, but for paying for it. Another program. So it's good to have options, and thank you for sharing this.
I was going to say also that we, in our district, one thing we've had to really work on is getting those gen ed teachers to IEP meetings, because it's hard to implement something that you don't know exists. And so really making them feel like a valued member of that team, not that they're just sitting there and getting information, but that they actually participate in what do those accommodations look like in your classroom? How does that work? And having those discussions to help them feel like they really are part of that team. As an administrator, when I was a principal, I always asked my gen ed teachers during IEP meetings questions that got them thinking about it and really engaged in that process. Because I think our service providers, for the most part, do a really good job of tracking their time, but it's the rest of the IEP that's implemented in a different setting away from our SPED teachers that is usually of concern. For me, it's in our district, a lot of our complaints are that the IEP is not being followed, not because service minutes aren't being provided, but because we're not following the accommodations or the BIP or the whatever. And so I think just having the whole team present and having those discussions during the IEP meeting is really important. And if we're struggling with some accommodations in a classroom, then we pull another IEP meeting and have the gen ed teacher talk about why those are struggles for them and what might be more effective, and amend the IEP if we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I sharing a Word document draft right now? Yeah.
You are sharing the Idaho guidance handbook or the
Okay,
IEP guidance handbook.
This is an older draft, but it's just the one I clicked on first. We're actually going to have some new resources coming out very soon. Ignore this is draft that still has highlights and notes for me to do things and whatnot. But beginning of the school year reminders, creating a service tracking sheet, and there's a sample service log that will be linked, as well as a progress monitoring Google sheet for people who are trying to track goals, which is a little bit different than that MTSS one. This one is just very simple. It only shows the goal and the student's actual progress, so it doesn't have the rate of improvement and all the other things. You can still add notes to it. And then it's going to have, when does this go live for us, Rachel? As soon as we get it, it's the final. We have three more things that we have to double check on wording wise, and then it goes to for accessibility review, and then it should get posted. I'm hoping, what month is this? I'm hoping by the end of the month. But how do you prepare for the IEP team meeting? And excuse the scrolling. Who needs to be on it? Also, this is really important. It's going to explain who can be on dual roles, because I think sometimes we forget who can be a dual role and who can't be a dual role. Team member excusals, and then there's these planning samples. So action items, things that we need to make sure our special education teachers do. But the reason I'm sharing this is really about that sample. This will become in, we're going to talk about parents later. So sample parent input form, and it's going to have a sample teacher input form. And so in addition to some of our other resources, I know I've shared the modules on Gen Ed Special Ed collaboration with you guys, and it really goes into detail about how Gen Ed teachers can really be part of that process and what their responsibility is in the special education process. This is another tool that our special ed teachers will have to really get information from our Gen Ed counterparts. And also there's a student input one. So just things that are coming up to look out for. They should be ready before the school year starts. And so if your teachers are going to essential components of the IEP, Stephanie and I will be delivering that. And they will, this resource will be available. It'll be available online, but they'll get to play around with it a little bit there too. So I digress, sorry. Is there anything else? No? Okay. Stephanie, you're supposed to keep me on track.
You are on track.
Am I?
Yep.
Conflict resolution. Don't get into a conflict. Special ed is so emotionally charged, right? It is so stressful as a parent to have a child that maybe isn't doing what's expected or developing as expected, and all you want is for your child to be okay. You want your child to have friends. You don't want your child getting in trouble at school. You may or may not care that your child's getting good grades or bad grades. Maybe you're just happy that your kid has made it out of the NICU and is alive, right? And that's like, the rest of it doesn't matter. Your kid is alive because they've gone through so many surgeries and whatnot. There's kids that are very medically fragile, and sometimes parents are like, we're gonna just this sheer stress of going through all of those doctor's appointments and medical appointments, and now you're in a school situation and there's all these other professionals and there's just so many things going on. It can be very intimidating, very scary, very stressful. Sometimes you've got parents that are like, you know what, whatever happens at school, no big deal. And then you've got parents that are like, they need to know that, like, when their child used the restroom, how many, bowel movements the child had, how the feeding tube went, like a feeding tube situation went. They want to know all of those details because they have so much anxiety about their child's well-being, right? And even if we have a student that has a, you know, specific learning disability versus a student who has a shunt and variety of other medical things going on and other disabilities, they're all our kids, right? And we all love them and we just want what's best for them. And that comes with a lot of emotion. And when we don't, as parents, when we don't get the impression that the school team is there to support us and really has our back and our child's best interest at heart, it can lead to some very intense conversations. And so I think, and I say this over and over again, but it is that relationship that you're going to have with the families that is going to make and break, right? You're going to make mistakes. Your special ed team is going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen that shouldn't happen. But when the parents understand that all of those mistakes are literally just mistakes, you own up to them, you fix them as soon as you find out about them, and you have those honest conversations and you have that trust, that goes a long way. When parents feel like they have to fight for their child's rights or what they perceive is the best interest for their child, that's when we're going to have some issues, right? And so when our initial response really matters, right? What we don't want is to rise up to that level of either anger or upsetness, whatever that emotion is that parent's feeling. We want it just like we do with anybody who's upset, right? In our classrooms, we want to stay calm, we're composed, we're listening to them, we're trying to understand, why is this person coming and yelling at me? What's going on? Like, what is the function of their behavior right now? They're upset. Why are they upset? Because XYZ. Okay, let's figure out how we can support, right? How we can help, and doing it in a way that doesn't escalate, but rather moves towards resolution. And I can't tell you how many situations I've been in where it's the relationship I had with the family. I don't want to say that saved me, but that made it so that we could be honest about our mistakes, own up to our mistakes, fix our mistakes, and do it in a collaborative way, as opposed to going through dispute resolution, right? Or going some other route. I've had parents come in, you could see visibly that that anger was there just by the way they walk. They're so tense, right? You can see that anger. But when you take the time to listen, right, you're understanding where they're coming from, their point of view, and then you're able to alleviate their concerns. You know, the goal is for them to walk out with all that tension released, right? When they're not, their teeth aren't gritted and they're not coming in angry. And it can be challenging. And sometimes, you know, you can't win over everybody, right? But there's usually at least one person at the school that is able to form a relationship with the family, right? And sometimes it's the gen ed teacher because they, you know the parents first and maybe they know them best and the family's best. It might be the janitor. It might be a parent. Whoever it is that parent trusts, you're going to want to kind of leverage that, right? You're going to want to make sure that you're continuing to build that relationship, but you might have to start small and you might have to really build on it. Again, vent, validate, let them vent, you validate, and don't rise to that level of upsetness. Just make sure that you're maintaining that neutral face. You're showing that you're listening. You're showing that you're caring. You're using active listening, body language, all those tools that you guys know. Because it can be tricky. And sometimes people are just mad at the world, right? They've had a rough day. Their kids in the hospital, they're whatever's going on, you know, somebody might be in jail. They might have hit a deer on the way to school that day. Like, we don't know what's going on in their worlds. And yeah, they might take it out on us, but at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about them and what's going on with them. And it sometimes feels like it's directed towards us, but we have to just let that go because it's not about us. One of my favorite, practicing self-awareness, right? This is so important. I think sometimes we don't realize that as adults, and I think we talked about this at the behavior last week, or was it last week? Yeah, about when we were talking about behavior. We can make things worse without realizing it, right? We can accelerate or agitate the situation without realizing that that's what we're doing. And so it's really important that when there is some sort of conflict, when there is escalation, that we are able to just kind of find our zen in the moment and be the calm in the storm. And that's how we're going to get to that resolution, right? What you don't want is if you're also elevated, right, then it's just going to elevate that other person. We don't want to unintentionally escalate conflict. I lost my train of thought there, but I think just making sure that we're really paying attention to our face, our facial expression, our tone of voice. Kids and parents, right? They know when we're upset. They know when we're irritated. They know when we're agitated, especially our kids who aren't maybe verbal. They're sometimes the best like watchers of facial expressions, right? And body language. And so it's really important that we're mindful of our bodies in space, what we're doing with our face, our tone, etc. I get in trouble a lot because I'm usually joking around with people and sometimes they don't know me well enough. So and I don't smile when I'm joking. So I have to be mindful that, okay, if I'm saying something, I need to smile if it's supposed to be funny. Otherwise, people think I'm mad. I don't know, I'm not. All right. Yeah, the power to choose our response, right, lies in our growth and freedom. Has anyone read that book? Viktor Frankl? I can't read it. My husband read it and I just didn't have the courage, but I will eventually. All right. We talked about this quite a bit, right? Assume positive intent, pause and listen, try to figure out where they're coming from, clarify, reframe, don't get defensive. Also, you don't want to attack, right? You just need to find, like I said, that calm. I think it helps really every situation. If you understand where people are coming from, it really helps us react in a way that is helpful and supportive, even if you don't agree with it. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what they're saying, but if you can get to a place where you're understanding each other's point of view, I think that's a really powerful place to be. All right, this is a 7-minute video. I won't be able to hear it, so let me know.
Hey, you won't believe where I am right now. I'm in Mrs.
Hold on, is it playing already?
Mrs. Smith's office again.
Carry on.
Yeah, talking about Kobe's speech therapy. Can't wait till this is over. Oh, yeah, I gotta go. I'll see you. Bye.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes, hi.
My name is Mrs. Smith. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So I understand that you've come here to talk about your child's speech therapy.
Yeah, my son Kobe, he's in Mrs. James' class, and honestly, it's not going very well. And Kobe, I'm here because I want more speech therapy for Kobe.
Yes, I know. I know that right now he's getting an hour a week, 30 minutes twice a week, which is pretty typical.
Yeah, not enough. Not enough for Kobe. He's going to need... I would like to see Kobe get an hour a day, 4 days a week.
4 days a week? That's a lot of speech therapy for a child.
But you see, right there...
I'm sorry, excuse me. Yes, hello? No, not right now. Would you let them know I'll call back in about, I don't know, 10 minutes? Yeah, thanks. Bye. Okay, sorry. So 4 hours a week of speech therapy is probably a little unreasonable to expect.
Yeah, well, okay, let me tell you why I need 4 hours a week. Every time that I go to pick up Kobe, he's in the corner and he's not interacting with anybody. And I went and talked to one of my friends. She's another parent. And she said that every time she goes, that's basically where he is too. So I'm hearing it from everybody that Kobe's like not even being
in a corner in the classroom.
Yeah, he's in the corner, like alone, you know? I mean, Kobe's a good little guy and he can do well by himself, but
I have a report right here that I got from the teacher this morning. And she certainly indicates that he's a great little student.
This would have been great to have before. I mean, I don't really have the time to read this right now, but would have been really great to have before.
Well, yeah, I got it this morning. I asked the teacher to email it to me this morning.
Well, okay. And I'm sure that the teacher isn't finding any problems with him. I mean, he doesn't do anything wrong. He's not a problem in class. He's not some sort of behavior issue. But Mrs. Smith, he's not.
Okay, in the interest of everyone's like cringe factor, I was just reading the closed captioning, but yikes, right? What was going on there?
I think she failed to ask why. Why are you thinking that he might need more speech therapy when clearly it wasn't a speech? I think it wasn't a speech therapy issue. It was him accessing his general education peers in a more social setting. So she didn't really find out the whys.
Yeah, didn't take the time. Stacy, were you talking? You're muted.
Sorry, I said she wasn't listening to the mom.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering where the rest of the team is.
Yeah, right. Just interested, already made up her mind before the meeting. Yeah, that predetermination. It's always fun. What else? All right. Well, let's see if take two is any better. I won't make you watch the whole 7 minutes because it is long. But yeah, incredibly dismissive.
The phone call. It was a phone call for me.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I have stories about phone calls, but we won't go there today.
Oh, come in, Mrs. Jones.
Oh, yes.
I'm Mrs. Smith. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to make this meeting.
Oh, of course. Can I get you anything? A cup of coffee, a glass of water?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
Please, have a seat.
You've totally got this. That's cute.
It's kind of our philosophy around here.
It's really cute.
I do appreciate you coming in, Mrs. Jones. Did you get the progress report that I sent you?
Yes, I did. Thanks for sending it. I actually had plenty of time to read it. I also have Kobe's most recent IEP here with me.
Oh, great. And I had a chance to review that as well.
Okay. I also took down some notes, just some general concerns, things like that, to help me get through everything.
That's great. And if you don't mind, I would like to take notes as well so that I don't forget what we talked about.
For sure. Oh, also, if it's all right, I'm just going to turn my cell phone off really quick. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'm here because I'm not exactly satisfied with Kobe's progress. I feel like he should have made more progress by now, and, well, I feel like now is the time to fix what needs to be fixed. Specifically, I think that Kobe could use more speech therapy to...
So everything's different right there, right? The body language is different, the tone is different, the attention, the active listening, right? All of that is different. And I know you guys know this, right? But sometimes I think that when we're in the midst of putting out all the fires and we're just trying to get through the day, and you know you've got 20 other meetings that day, and you've got Johnny in the it's always Johnny in the hallway, and he's maybe putting some stuff on the walls. You got a lot of things going on, and sometimes we forget that we just need to slow down and be present with that person in that meeting in the moment, right? And make sure that they know that we've got their attention. We're here to be supportive and be collaborative and work together. So I think we just have to remember again that any kind of behavior that we're encountering, right? We want to look at the function of it and then just try to figure out, okay, how can we be proactive and be collaborative and solutions based? All right. I think it's really is there a link to that video? Yeah.
I can put it in there.
Steph, do you want to stick it in that SPED 101 Google Doc thing? And I apologize, the person who does the closed captioning for this video is going to be not happy with me because that video had closed captioning and it messes him up. So Suka, in advance, I apologize for that. So early steps to take when conflict is on the horizon, you know it's coming, right? Data doesn't lie. Good data doesn't lie, right? You want to make sure that you are looking at the data when you're making decisions and when you're talking about an issue, right? Clarifying the concern, making sure you actually understand what the person's upset about, not just what they say they're upset about, because they're not always the same thing, right? Sometimes they might say thank you for sharing. Sometimes they might say they're upset about one thing, but really there's an underlying bigger issue, right? And so making sure that you understand the whole situation Schedule a meeting, right? Get on top of it, review everything together, make sure the right people are at the table. There is nothing more infuriating than having a meeting that's with hot people, people that are angry, right? And you don't have the people that need to be at the table to make decisions. That's problematic because now you're saying, oh, sorry, we have to meet again. That's not going to make anybody happy, right? We're going to want to make sure that we're prepared for that. We're going to document everything, of course, in written notice. And we're going to stay focused on, we're here for the child. We're here for the student. That is why we are all here at this table and we want what's best for the student. So just staying focused on that. I'm going a little bit quickly because we only have 18 minutes. Dispute resolution. Stay out of it if you can. The facilitation is actually really helpful. Facilitation, mediation of meetings, that can be really helpful. It's free services, and that can be a really helpful service. State administrative complaint investigations and due process hearings aren't fun for anybody, and make sure that, you know, when you are making decisions as administrators that and when you're, you know, making decisions for a school as a whole, that you're always keeping in mind that IDEA rules overall, right? So you might have a school policy that XYZ is the case, but if a child needs something else and that they need that to access FAPE, free and appropriate public education, that's what they're going to get, right? We're not going to say, well, the school doesn't allow that, because that's when you're going to one situation where you're going to end up in hot water. There is a formal process, of course. You can read about it on the Department of Education dispute resolution website, which I'm pretty sure is linked in the module. If not, let us know and we'll get it in there. But again, relationships solve a lot of this, having a positive relationship, having that trust, and building that from the get-go. So who can make a request for dispute resolution? The parent can, the state can, and the LEA can as well, right? So just making sure that we are letting parents know of their rights, and that also we avail ourselves of those as necessary. So families may seek services when they're trying to figure out about their rights. They're having difficulty trying to figure out who they're supposed to ask questions to. They're trying to clarify or confirm information about services. They get frustrated because they're not being communicated with about how the IEP team is functioning. They might feel like they're not really part of the process. There might be a denial, and they want to follow up on that. Or they're just overwhelmed, right? And they want a third-party facilitator who has expertise with IDEA. So those are some of the reasons. Sometimes people get really nervous, LEAs in particular, when a parent requests a facilitated meeting or a mediator. And at the end, they're usually very happy that that was the case, and they felt very supported by those individuals that fulfill those roles. Going back to family engagement, you want parents to feel welcome when they walk into the school. You want parents to feel like they're part of a collaborative meeting when you're sitting in an IEP team. I have been in schools where I volunteered twice a week, every week, and the front staff never knew who I was. The administrator had no idea who I was. And it was a larger school. I think they had about 900 kids, so I get that. But coming from a really small, tiny rural area to that school was culture shock for me as a parent, but also it was just such a strange thing to walk into that building, and I never felt welcome. Even I can't remember anybody's name, so that wouldn't offend me, but just the fact that nobody greeted you, no one said hello, no one made me feel like they were happy to see me there at volunteering or whatever. So I think just thinking about the culture of our school and what does it feel like as a parent when you're walking in to that building. What does it feel like when parents have questions? How do they get answers? Do they know who to contact? Is the communication, are the channels really clear? Is the communication really clear? Is our website clear about who to contact? What is the hierarchy, et cetera? So just making sure that we have all of that information clearly communicated to parents. You know, here's the national standards for family school partnerships, right? And really thinking about that, making sure that we're meeting all these standards, right? And it doesn't have to be like this particular set of standards, but the general idea, right? That we're communicating, we're welcoming, we're supporting students. That's why we're all here, and that student needs come first, right? We're speaking up for all students. We're sharing, I don't like the word power, but we're sharing the power. I feel like a Power Ranger now. And that we're being collaborative with the community. I think that we forget sometimes that we have all these great community members and local businesses and other people who are stakeholders in our schools, and it can be really powerful to meet with them and see how you can form a relationship with their other stakeholders. I worked at a PBL school, and before school started, all of the teachers went out and we met with our local businesses and explained to them what we did at a PBL school, what we were about, and created some really great partnerships through that. All right. We're not going to watch this video unless you really want to, Steph.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm not gonna, do you guys want to have a discussion about family engagement? Is there anything anyone wants to say? You guys are not hearing it. No one's interrupting. Okay, I'll come back to you if you want. Again, though, it matters, right? If families are engaged, we're improving student outcomes. We're supporting the individualization of education for the students, right? We're building trust, we're building collaboration, we're promoting advocacy and empowerment. Who knows about iPool? Idaho Parents Unlimited? You guys should all raise your hand. If you don't know about iPool, look them up, bookmark it. When you have an IEP meeting, especially when it's an initial, make sure your special education teachers, or you do it when you're handing out procedural safeguards. Usually the second page has contact information. iPool is on that second page. Highlight it for them. Tell them this is your parent, let them know what they do, right? Tell them this is your parent organization. This is what they do. Here's how they help. Here's their contact information. And it helps parents know that they're part of something bigger, right? It's never a good thing to feel alone. And we want parents to feel empowered, right? To be advocates. Parents have a lot to do, and especially when we have really involved students. And we want our parents to be informed. We want them to know what their rights are. We want them to know what their child's rights are. And we want them to know best practices, right? But we also want to be championing those ourselves. And so really making sure that it's collaborative, that we're talking, we're asking questions. We're not just pushing some agenda through because we're trying to get through the meeting, but we're actually having those honest conversations go a long way. And you guys know that, right? We've talked about this, I think, for the last 4 weeks. We're here to support families, and we're going to be collaborative with them, and we're going to make sure that I've had IEP meetings at people's houses. I have had IEP meetings where the dad was on Zoom in a drive-through at McDonald's with 3 screaming kids in the back car. I have held IEP meetings at the parking lot of people's places of work. Because that's how we could get them, right? I have done a lot of interesting things to have IEP meetings with families in attendance, or at least virtually participating. And so I think that we just have to keep in mind that sometimes we're dealing with people who, I don't want to say are on the margins, but just have so little left, like flexibility. They're up here with stress and with all the things that they need to do. And we're asking them to do something else. We're asking them to take off work to come in for a meeting where they're going to get told that their child isn't very good at something, right? That doesn't sound very positive. And so really thinking about how we can reframe this, how we can celebrate our students, and how we can work with families to make these meetings work for them. It was an aha moment when the same families that it took, I felt like you were pulling teeth to get them to come to an IEP meeting. We're very happy to go to their child's exhibition night where they're sharing what their project-based learning was that they had just done, or the choir recital, or whatever it was. And I went, oh, duh, right? I need to think about this a little bit differently because those parents were showing up for that. And so really just thinking about how can we be as accommodating as possible, also keeping in mind we're dealing with contracts and that sort of thing. Dave likes iPool. Yeah, well, they're not going to be part of the IEP team, but what's nice, and I don't know that their role is to teach you what you're supposed to do. But sometimes it's nice for parents to hear that the school, the IEP team is not, just making stuff up, right? That what they're doing is best practice in the best interest of the child. And sometimes our mediators and facilitators can really help with that for sure. Okay. Any ahas or fun experiences, short ones, because we only have a couple minutes, that you want to share about families, engaging families? Kaylee, are you talking? Are you unmuted? No? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. There's the icon for Apple. Again, it goes back to trust and respect, right? We're going to presume best intentions. We are going to build trust. Even though it might start off rocky, we're going to do whatever it takes to build trust and to form relationships. And even if you don't like each other, to get in a place where you respect each other, you're cordial to each other, and you know that what you're doing is in the best interest of the child. And yeah, so that's both of your roles, right? That you're both working towards that goes a long way. All right.
Vanessa,
Yeah.
just really quick, within the Google Doc that we have been compiling, I added a couple of additional special education aligned conferences for those who are interested in learning more about process or specific components of special education. The three that I added, first one is the PAC RIM SPED conference, and that is generally at the end of May, and it is in Honolulu every year. The University of Hawaii puts that on. The second is the Council of Administrators for Special Education, the CASE conference. That's generally in November. And then one that's more nuanced, that is not necessarily related to special education process, but it is related to learning disabilities. It's the Learning Disability Association of America, and they put on a conference generally in the spring. So I added those three links, not necessarily to the conference registrations, but to their organization websites if you're interested in learning more about those things.
Thank you, Stephanie, for doing that. And I dropped them in the chat as well. So at the end of the day, I want you guys to know that we're here for you. If you have SPED related questions, if you need support, if you just need resources, if you want me to guide you towards modules, Stephanie and I, there's a bunch of us coordinators that we all have different areas of expertise, and we're all here to support you. And so I would too probably learn more in Hawaii. And so I think what I really want you guys to know is how to get a hold of us. So does everybody know how to get to the help desk, the SESTA help desk? Okay, if you don't know how to get to the Idaho SESTA help desk, then let me know. I'm going to show you just because it's that important to me that I'm going to make everybody watch. So we're going to go to, I think this is screen 3. I'm going to just type in ITC, Idaho, SESTA, because I can't remember anything. So I'm going to do that. Oh, look, it's the Idaho Training Clearinghouse, SESTA, help desk request. It is right here. I'm going to put this link in the chat again. I know you guys have it, but in case you forgot, that's where it is. I'm also going to put it in the in this document. I'm going to stop sharing and see if you guys have any questions. You guys are so quiet. You guys are so done. It's the last one. You guys are a little too happy for that. All right, so what's next? You're going to complete module 4. If you have been enjoying vacation or sick, not enjoying vacation, or just are a procrastinator and you haven't been doing your assignments on time, just get everything turned in by Sunday the 19th. By midnight, don't worry, I'm not actually checking that it can be yeah, midnight's good. Yes.
I like going back to some of these and finding the resources that are listed. How long are you guys going to keep all of this posted when I can go back? There was a lot of information. I tried to print as much as I could, but how long does this stay on this website? Like, I think you can go into Zoom and pull these up and see the links and stuff, right? Or do you guys, I remember you said a Google Doc, but even in the course modules and stuff, there are great resources. How long does this all stay available?
I'm not sure. I think is it another month?
I think so. I think for Boise State people, it will be mid-August when this closes because that's when final grades are due. Please don't wait though. We need you to submit your work by Sunday.
Oh, sure.
Otherwise, just like any other class.
I'm just saying after the work submitted, I just like to go in and find the resources you have shared.
Unfortunately, because these are housed the way they're housed, we don't they go away. So you will lose access to them once the course is over. That said,
unless you bookmark them, it looks
you
like
bookmark them. The SPED 101 links that document that I've shared out.
Sure.
Just make a copy of it, make it your own, and you can drop all of the links in there. I mean, do whatever you want with it, right? You can, if once you make a copy of it, it's yours. I don't plan on deleting it. But if I get abducted by aliens and I no longer have a U of I account, it might not exist anymore. So
I have it too. So if you should have access to your Canvas course module information through mid-August.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Don't quote us on that.
Yep.
I'm going to stop recording because I just realized we are still recording. So for those of you who had to watch the video, I'm sorry and thank you for listening. I'm going to stop recording now.